This is Ambazonia Calling. News, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorials. Ambazonia Calling is a co-production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. Welcome. My name is Ntumfoyn Herbert, and I bring revolutionary greetings from our studios in Washington, D.C. to all of you, friends of Ambazonia and fellow Ambazonians on Ground Zero and across the globe.
Endorsements continue pouring in from the global community following the historic agreement between leaders of Ambazonian pro-independence movements and negotiators acting at the behest of La République du Cameroon. I am innocent here.
The Bia Kangaroo Court will condemn Sisikwe Tabe. This is Willibert Ade.
You are all soldiers of the revolution, not prisoners of the colonizer. Fight them with the best deal you can negotiate for Ambazonia and make us all proud. This is MANYU.
The only way the upcoming negotiations can be another fulfillment is if Ambazonians fail to do their job. If they fail to plan, fail to unite, fail to build cohesion, this is Lambert Mbom.
It is a rejection of elections that made it hard to blame any of the liberation groups that spoke from Geneva this week on behalf of Ambazonia. This is Tanya Jude Agua Ozugen.
A credible platform built on trust and bringing together all liberation movements is needed like yesterday. This is Lambert Mbom.
It is no secret that Bob Marley is one of my idols from whose music I often draw inspiration. This is Geneva Agreement.
When the enemy takes a brother or a sister, that person becomes a saint.
My fellow Ambazonians, let me remind you of Cameroon expectations. Mark Barretta.
Ilaria Allegrossi is back. This is Veronique Betimfe.
The secret forces that have worked for almost a century to make them a colonized people are rearing their ugly heads again. Will Ambazonians unmask their Kibaranko and shame them? This is Divine Angie.
Demanding the release of our brothers and sisters languishing in the dungeons of La République today is not only ill-advised, but absolutely bad for them. This is MANYU.
Professor Anyango is in no position, honestly, to speak to these matters. Innocent here for Ambazonia Calling.
This is edition number 054 of Ambazonia Calling. Today is Sunday, the 30th of June 2019.
Oh, freedom, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes, freedom.
What a week it has been for the peoples of Ambazonia and of the Cameroons. The beginning of the end for the Biya regime, demonstrations in Geneva, a deal that would most certainly lead to the recognition of the independence of Ambazonia, sealed with the Swiss government as the mediator. As you can suspect, we've got a jam-packed program for you today. We've got Mark Barretta with a special message to all Ambazonians. It is a must-listen message. We've got a letter to our comrades in the jails and dungeons of La République du Cameroon that's coming from MANYU. But we begin right away with this must-listen message from Mark Barretta.
My fellow Ambazonians, let me remind you of Cameroon expectations. Cameroon knows that we own more than 90% on the ground and we are growing day by day. But they are confident that they can beat us and reduce our gains that we all have made. This is why the Nicodemously brought in the Swiss, and they have been in silence ever since. Number two, Cameroon knows that we know that they are not yet ready for negotiations. All the actions on the ground have proven that. And Cameroon needed a buffer zone to capture us. That is why they brought the Swiss talks, so that our outright refusal will set the international community against us. We skipped that trap. Cameroon is expecting that the Swiss talks will largely divide our leaders and us. They expect that we will start arguing who should be involved, who is doing what, and by that we will start calling some of our leaders and persons as sellouts, blacklegs, etc. They expect us to reject our leaders. This is why they are silent and watching carefully. In this way, we lose focus on the ground and they keep making huge gains. Cameroon expects us to use the next months and tear ourselves apart. And even when they finally decide to come on the table, they will likely meet those that we have wrongly accused and rejected. But now, my people, how do we kill these expectations? The first that I duly believe is that we need the leaders of all movements, AGOVC, SCOPE, IGs, ROA, ROAN, MORIX, APLM, SCNC, Consortium, SCAPO, and all other stakeholders to come in a private conclave and put in place a team of experts, all agreed by them. In this way, we are ready at any point in time that negotiations may come. That way, the arguments and division amongst us is completely dead, and we may have disgraced Cameroon expectations. As an agreed team of experts is put in place, all the groups can now go back doing what they do best. And of course, we can now focus our interest on raising money from ground zero actions. This way, we may have twice beaten Cameroon, while they expected us to argue, become divided and lose track on ground zero. We may have dribbled them by putting in place a team of experts while still investing in funding ground zero. I personally think if we do this, we may have beaten Cameroon on the ground, and then we can go and beat them on the table whenever that happens. I have made these statements in all good faith, and like I said, I have shared it with all the leaders in all the various movements concerned. Because if the leaders, if they come together and put in place a team in which all of them agree, we may have killed the noise, the division that Cameroon is expecting of us. And the same sanity will flow on social media. So it's my call that all the leaders involved must keep aside perceived differences. And I think by this stage, we may have come to the conclusion that no group, no government, no individual can do it alone. Yes, let our leaders come together in a private conclave with stakeholders and put in place a team of experts in all spheres of nationhood. And let's show the international community that we are ready. We are not a bunch of people who just want war, who just want to keep the conflict going. Because Cameroon has continued to show path fit. By your humble servant and comrade Mark Barretta.
Lambenbaum is here with our editorial for the week.
Social media has been lit up since Thursday evening with disinformation and misinformation, reacting to news that some Ambazonian leaders meeting in the Alps had brokered a deal under which Switzerland would mediate a political settlement to the war between Cameroon and southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. The lack of trust made even the truth hard to believe. The wave of statements from the international community welcoming the deal woke up from slumber every wannabe mediation/negotiation expert. Creeping out of their hideouts, the experts who know so much about mediating peace but have not yet mediated peace among Ambazonian groups eating each other raw, cried foul. They claimed that letting anyone else but them to handle literally means cheating them of their birthright to negotiate the future and destiny of Ambazonia. Given the secrecy in which deliberations had been held and the massive impact the decision reached shall forever have in history, skepticism was to be expected. But there was more. Intellectual dishonesty, a stubborn refusal to admit that those who had accomplished the feat could have pulled it off, an open hatred for some had so many questioning the character of those who did the work. They questioned their mandate. They quarreled about how they got there. Who picked them? The discussion was about the individuals, not the results obtained, which sounded too good to be true. After years of canvassing, clamoring and crying, many actors who wished they were the ones bringing home the pork could not simply applaud the fact that the Ambazonia independence restoration quest had reached a historic milestone. The critics, the eternal doubting Thomases, predicted failure even before anything had been done. Whatever gold mine this opportunity could turn out to be was ignored in favor of painting it as the worst land mine yet. It was not about cautioning Ambazonians to tread carefully. Rather, it was damning everything. The naysayers ratcheted up why it will. What am I saying? They ratcheted up why it is not a credible alternative to war, or for that matter, nothing else. The world was responding positively for the first time since the war in Ambazonia started. And the people who had invited the world to do just that, in many, many demonstrations, were letting it be known they only wanted a result if they were the ones who achieved it. With everyone an expert, I thought, why not me? Be it known that I forewarned this day that unless Ambazonians unite, they will negotiate from a position of great weakness. The deal sealed in Geneva does not prevent Ambazonians from doing diplomacy and self-defense. It should not be too hard to work and chew gum. A credible platform built on trust and bringing together all liberation movements, bigger, nicer, better, and more professional than SCACOF, ARC, and SCLC combined, is needed like yesterday. It just may work this time around if all the grandstanding and political gangsterism stop where Ambazonia's interests begin. It will never work if everyone can attend workshops on capacity building organized by one group like AGOV-C, only to see the latter boycott everything else not led by them. The trust deficit cries to high heaven, and success will be built on trust, not on some blind allegiance to ideologues and what our parents used to call wayo or sweet mop. Trust won't happen until past mistakes and errors are acknowledged. Ambazonia will be liberated not by deceit packed into speeches full of half-truths. It won't flow from the verbal hair-splitting that makes it possible to buy into an idea only if it comes from one's trusted leader or group. Calculated silence designed to cause Ambazonians to believe something that is not true won't cut it either. Ambazonians must give the benefit of doubt, even if I must borrow from former US President Ronald Reagan to add, trust, but verify. Ambazonian leaders, that is, true leaders who put Ambazonia first, will set differences apart right now and unite, whether they believe or not in the Swiss-led process. Whether the over-sabi ones who are mad they were not part of Geneva, or the dull ones who, despite their foolishness, sealed Geneva, unless we work together, we will sink together. All those people who have claimed to be experts in negotiations can prove that they are indeed experts if they can negotiate cohesion and inclusivity among all these leaders with overblown egos. That work begins now, and the cohesion built would have to sustain until we get to BOYO. We don't have a choice. This is Lambert Mom for Ambazonia calling.
What Cameroon has done to us, I want you never to forget. The pain they have brought to bear on this generation, I want you never to forget. Not out of hate, but so that the next generation will remember and make sure they do the things they are supposed to do, never to go through this again.
I will continue to play my part to ask the people of Southern Cameroon to take their revolution into their hands and continue the fight to liberate themselves.
I'm sorry to say, because of France's policies in Africa, in French Africa, the state of La République du Cameroon do not have any pressure on them to find a way to resolve this issue, because they are always thinking that No matter what happens, France will always be there to give them coverage.
Still ahead in this edition, we have The Devil Unmasked with Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta. We have a winner of the Nyamfuka of the Week. And we are not done until you have heard our letter to Joshua. So stay tuned, kick back, relax, and enjoy Ambazonia calling. Almost everything that Ambazonians do these days, they do with consideration for those of our brothers and sisters who have given their lives for this cause, those who are in prison, those who are in refugee camps, those who are seeking sanctuary in bushes and forests. Today, Barrister Manjong Judambe sends a heartwarming message to our brothers and sisters in jail. A little more time you will be there, and a little more time you won't be, because freedom is coming. Here's Manjong Judambe.
To our comrades in La Republique jails and dungeons, you are right to demand a country of your own. International law, United Nations resolutions, African Union court rulings, and even natural law and our common morality recognizes these rights. To join the international community as a sovereign nation is to join an exclusive Njangi group. One of the preliminary tests the world has asked us to submit to in order to be considered as serious in our quest is for La Republique du Cameroon and Ambazonia to engage in third-party mediated negotiations without preconditions. There is a reason why the world has placed the phrase without preconditions in the heart of what they are looking for, and we must be cognizant of it and treat it as the holy grail that it is. As Ambazonians, we cannot honor their request for us to engage in third-party negotiations without preconditions by demanding, for instance, that leaders in jail be released before any negotiations. If we set preconditions, La Republique would definitely do same. We need no soothsayer to remind us that their very first conditions and or demands will be for Ambazonians to lay down their weapons and to remove any discussions on separation from the agenda. Is this honestly a position we should consciously walk ourselves into? I don't think so. Once an agenda and or venue for preliminary negotiations have been mutually agreed upon, then negotiators on behalf of Ambazonia can make demands, including demands they can insist have to be made in order to allow the negotiations to open. In essence, what I'm saying is that demand for the release of our comrades in La Republique jails and dungeons should be an integral component of the negotiations proper and not a conditio sine qua non for negotiations to begin. Every precondition we pose will be followed by a counter from La Republique. The more we insist on getting any particular demand met, the more La Republique will want to get in exchange before granting, and vice versa, of course. Besides, debating preconditions as a requirement for negotiations can only delay and risk postponing negotiations indefinitely. The BIA regime, notably if Ambazonia is the one that poses preconditions, would use the delay to try to reduce the pressure on them from the international community. We have them on the hook already. The release of Ambazonian prisoners of war is bound to come high up on the agenda of negotiations. However, we must be very strategic about how we make our demands. The more we insist, the more the colonizer knows we are willing to make compromises in order to obtain what we seek. But if La Republique was offering to free jailed Ambazonians, leaders and the thousands of our comrades in their jails and prisons, and those prisoners themselves, their families, and our negotiators were telling La Republique that their release is not a priority, that it can wait for negotiations and more important priorities to be obtained first, then La Republique will be denied the leverage they could have if we are dying to see them walk free from jail. If, for instance, all the Ambazonian leadership in jail were to say, carry on without us, never surrender, we will only leave jail if we can go home to an independent Ambazonia, free of Cameroon colonial administrators and troops and protected by UN and international peacekeepers, then the BIA regime will realize that they need to give us more in concessions. The world and La Republique are watching us to see what we prioritize going forward. If the world reads that our leaders and people held in detention are prepared to die in jail for Ambazonia, the world will offer solutions cut to respond to that level of commitment. If our detained brethren refuse conditional release or release based on Ambazonians making some concession, then we would be truly honoring the fallen heroes. There is no way we can ever obtain that the colonizer brings them back from the dead. In the same vein, there is no way that the Republic will ever be able to refund the months and years spent in prison to our jailed leadership and comrades. What we should insist on is make sure that our comrades' sacrifices in jail pays a great dividend for Ambazonia's march to restoration of its independence. Don't get me wrong, I know it is tough on your families and on yourselves to stay even one additional minute in jail. However, please make sure that every second spent behind bars is paid for in gold by the colonizers. Do not accept a cheap deal to leave jail when you can obtain more for Ambazonia. Like Americans will say, don't cut and run. You are all soldiers of the revolution, not prisoners of the colonizer. Fight them with the best deal you can negotiate for Ambazonia and make us all proud. We can never thank you all enough for your sacrifices for modern Ambazonia. This is Manjong Jude Ambe for Ambazonia Calling.
If you go to Moyuka, nobody they live here. If you go to Munyenge, brother, nobody they stay there. Everybody don't run away because of wuru wuru. But when we pray, oh, revival will take place in Allah. Yeah, for sure.
Innocent Chia is here. He's got the first part of our news wrap-up for the week.
Endorsements continue pouring in from the global community following the historic agreement between leaders of Ambazonian pro-independence movements and negotiators acting at the behest of La République du Cameroon. From the European Union, the United States of America, and even the Secretariat of the United Nations, congratulatory messages show support for negotiations to start in earnest, sooner than later, and without any preconditions.
Le travail de Paul Biya en Europe. Voilà.
Paul Biya, assassin! Paul Biya, assassin! La Suisse complete!
A petition by a Swiss parliamentarian to evict Cameroon's President Biya from both his primary residence at the Intercontinental Geneva Hotel and Switzerland has gone viral.
L'heure est finie, l'heure est finie. L'heure est finie, on traverse. On traverse, Paul Biya sort.
Allez, on traverse.
L'heure est finie. L'heure est finie, les gaz ont fini. On a cassé la deuxième barrière. Deuxième barrière, on a cassé. La police s'est débordée. Il y a les coups de feu. Il y a les coups de feu, la police s'est débordée. Paul Biya sort de la sous aujourd'hui. Nous, on le déloge. Il va sortir. Les Suisses vont se prononcer. Ils vont le chasser en direct.
It comes after the anti-Biya movement across Europe rallied in Geneva.
Biya must go! Biya must go! Biya must go!
For a protest that quickly turned violent, resulting in the deployment of tear gas and water cannons by anti-riot police.
How many people Paul Biya go kill? How many people Paul Biya go kill? How many people?
Clashes with protesters also occurred midweek in the hotel lobby, even leading to an assault of an RTS journalist by Biya bodyguards. The journalist has since filed a complaint against Biya and his convoy, and the wheels of diplomacy are spinning. U.S. Congressman Dennis Davis of Illinois has promised Ambazonians that even though not in the House Foreign Relations Committee, he will be reaching out to his colleague, including Karen Bass of California, for the Congress and the U.S. government to ratchet up the heat on Cameroon. Congressman Davis was taking questions at a town hall meeting organized by Ambazonians in Chicago at the St. Joseph Church on West Monroe. Professor Carlson Anyangwe, jurist Dr. Valentine Ghana, and Professor Akbar Dima took turns tracing the history of the conflict as well as proffering solutions. Prepared remarks by Barrister John Frunso and Chris Ano of the IG Group were done extemporaneously owing to a shortage of time.
America is our last hope. You remember America voted for our independence on the 21st of April 1961. Make use of that vote, Congressman. And we are all crying because a second genocide is taking place. It took place in 1994 when Kofi Annan was the director of the peacekeeping force of the United Nations. Today, everybody says never again. So I'm pleading that the United States should intervene in the Southern Cameroon to stop the carnage, to stop the genocide that is going on. And I'm pleading on you, sir, to take this to Congress, to have the power to intervene in Southern Cameroon. And that is the genocide that is going on. You have been informed adequately, and I'm pleading on you to take this to Congress. That is why we're here. We thank you very much, sir.
Panelists were unequivocal that the solution is independence for Ambazonia and that the US has a major role to play.
I think that the beginning point to finding lasting solution is to halt the hostilities, pull off the gendarmes in Ambazonia, end the violence. It is impractical to begin to have a dialogue like the UN is calling, like the House Bill Resolution 358 is calling, with somebody who is killing your people daily. The first thing that must be done is for them to stop. That stoppage, the cessation of violence, will show the seriousness with which they want to dialogue. But if you are constantly being killed and people say, let's stop, of what essence is that talk? That is point number one. The second point is to go back to uncover the origins of the problems in the region. People say, oh, this happened a long time ago. What has it got to do with the present problems? Just as they say of slavery and any injustice that happened in the past. We have to begin where it began. And from there, if it doesn't go well, the next thing to do is to engage in armed struggle. The Algerians didn't call everybody around the world to come. They fought, they died, but they became independent. And many other African countries did that.
John Frundi has been released and reportedly returned home without any bodily injuries. The chairman of the Social Democratic Front, elsewhere leading opposition party in Cameroon, had been in captivity for a little over 24 hours following his kidnapping by unidentified persons Friday, June 28th.
I know that the SDF parliamentarians have struggled, done everything to table the Anglophone issues on the floor of Parliament to no avail. The senators in the first Senate, who were all Francophones, struggled to table it to no avail. In the second Senate, they've all been fighting to get it even on the agenda that should be discussed to no avail.
His bodyguard was shot on the leg. No group has taken ownership of the kidnapping. Ni John Frundi was also briefly kidnapped a month ago on his way to a funeral in Bui State. Archbishop Eswa of Bamenda Archdiocese was also briefly kidnapped and eventually released, probably suffering more psychological than physical trauma. He was returning from a working visit in BOYO State when he was arrested alongside a couple of others who were in his entourage. You are listening to Ambazonia Calling, your space for educated news analysis, informed opinions and commentary towards the recognition of a free, independent Ambazonia. I am Innocent Chair. Stay with us.
Innocent is staying with me. He's got the second part of our news wrap-up for the week.
Sources are reporting the death Saturday of the Colonial Divisional Officer for Noni, Bui State, Mr. Martin Gua, due to inadequate medical attention at the Yaoundé Military Hospital. The colonial officer had sustained life-threatening injuries in a mysterious helicopter crash in Oku that had reportedly killed one person back in May. Strident voices are condemning the senseless killing Thursday of 4 more young Ambazonian men by BIA terrorist forces in Sabga, a quiet village between Ndop and Bamenda. Reports say the men were commuting to Bamenda for work. Mimi Mefo Info is reporting the burning down of several houses by colonial terrorist forces of Cameroon in Lo and Chop villages in DONGA-MANTUNG state. Witnesses say the soldiers were angry because of the long distances they had to trek owing to roadside blocks by restoration forces. Another respected commander and self-defense volunteer has paid the ultimate price. A Lenoir Black of the Batibo Center Barracks and a volunteer guard were both killed, their bodies abandoned on the streets, even as a third was captured alive and whisked off to an unknown destination by La République du Cameroon soldiers. Finally, Honorable Joseph Weber, former SDF parliamentarian on the run in the UK, has been inflicting serious body blows on the battered Restoration Council of the IG Group. Speaking to a full SCNC house in the United Kingdom Saturday, the author of Weber Force castigated the chairman of the Restoration Council, Elvis Kometa, as heartless and without empathy for impeaching Sisiko Ayuk Tabe while he is in jail.
And I told him, please brother, don't do it. Let me tell you something that happened to me. On the parliamentary floor on the 2nd of December 2016, I was referring to ministers I had met 16 years before. But one, I could not mention. I told Kometa, I couldn't mention that guy because of our Anglo-Saxon tradition of fair play. I couldn't mention the guy because the guy is in jail. Yeah. The system he thought was a god has consumed him. Why should I put a stone on him? If I cannot do that to an enemy, why do it to a brother? Is it not enough impeachment to be in the hands of the oppressor? Is it not enough impeachment? For us revolutionaries, we have one rule. When the enemy takes a brother or a sister, that person becomes a saint. Yes, that person becomes a saint. Because if the person does not become a saint, you can continue doing different things and forget that they are there. It is a wrong thing to have done. And I told them.
Honorable Joseph Weber also lambasted the diaspora for decisions that he thinks have been thoughtless.
That's why I'm saying none of you listens to anybody. I even got this to the stage where I told him, brother, if they insist, resign. You know the reason I'm asking you to resign? Because history records even what we do in the dark. Yes. America is not too far for us to record that you did this to your own brother. You do not do it. Our standards of protecting the underdog, everything was washed away because,
Innocentia, Ambazonia calling.
So get on now on the train. Everybody, get on now on the train. Mothers, fathers, get on now on the train. Children, get on now on the train. Sister, brothers, get on now on the train. Husbands, wives too, get on now on the train. Oh, Abba, Father, bless us. Oh, Jesus Christus, guide us. Oh, Holy Spirit, lead us on the restoration journey of our liberty. So, restoration train is our freedom train.
The people of Ambazonia will never get over Fumbam, that conference in July 1961, at which they thought they had met brothers. But indeed they had met colonialists, Lambert Baum has got an analysis about the ghost of Fumban.
Ambazonians are haunted by the Fumban Conference of July 1961. It was at this conference that the final touches were put to the recolonization project that La République has been implementing in Ambazonia for 58 years. But it is an exaggeration to compare the Swiss-led process to the Fumban Conference. Fumban, to start with, was a dialogue, not a negotiation. If it was meant to be a negotiation, it however worked out as a dialogue between Amadou Ahidjo, raised by default to the rank of emperor, and the leaders of southern Cameroons, reduced to the rank of mere citizens under King Amadou Ahidjo. Another difference between Fumban and the Swiss-led process is that the venue was within Cameroon, where the tyrant of the day could exercise maximum control, influence, and fear over the other side. Two of the facilitators of the Fumban Conference, the United Nations and the United Kingdom, were a no-show, leaving widely biased France to masquerade behind Amadou Ahidjo as he annexed Ambazonia. There were effectively no guarantors to the Fumban Conference. The United Nations that should have filled in that role simply went missing in action, leaving Ambazonians to be recolonized. The job Ambazonians must do as preparations start for preliminary pre-negotiation meetings, it has to be the duty of every Ambazonian, notably leaders and negotiators, to ensure that they continue to scrutinize every key actor, the mediator and the guarantors, to ensure that the sins of Fumban are not visited anew on Ambazonia. If anything, the Swiss-led process looks set to have more guarantors. The European Union and the African Union, along with the United Nations and the Economic Community of Central African States, are most likely to form part of the long list of guarantors. The job of Ambazonians going forward has to include ensuring that those selected to represent these organizations are not compromised by their support for the colonizers in this case. Overall, though, the only way the upcoming negotiations can be another Fumban is if Ambazonians fail to do their job, if they fail to plan, fail to unite, fail to build cohesion, fail to stand up to any injustice tolerated in the course of the process, which is why we here at Ambazonia Calling urge Ambazonians to remain vigilant and on the lookout to jump into action should anyone trying to take them for another ride to Fumban 2.0. This is Lambert Baum for Ambazonia Calling.
Can't give up, no justice, no peace. Can't give up, 'cause sun's gonna rise anyway. It's just a moment in time.
Independence is so important for any people that on your march to independence, you tolerate all kinds of things, even when they call you names. All hell broke loose across Ambazonia and across Ambazonian communities around the world when they saw a press release in which the Swiss government referred to the Northwest and Southwest. Here's Manjong Judambe about the necessity for all Ambazonians to keep their eye on the prize.
When you seek restoration of independence, you cannot allow petty, mostly emotional issues in the peripheries to distract you. You keep your eye on the prize. The use of the words political opposition, Northwest and Southwest to describe Ambazonian pro-independence groups in a press release by the Swiss Ministry of Foreign Affairs had some Ambazonians fuming with fury. Whereas there is good enough reason to be furious at those who intentionally and stubbornly decide to get your name wrong, Ambazonians who've been called so many derogatory names before should brace themselves for the end seen nothing yet. The worst is yet to come, and they might as well resign to the notion that they will be called the wrong names for a little while more, until they become a sovereign nation. The statements by the European Union, the United Nations, and the U.S. Undersecretary of State for African Affairs kept away from some of the more vexing names Ambazonians don't want to hear and or be associated with. Will everyone call Ambazonians by the name they prefer for themselves? Certainly not. And the officials Ambazonians should accommodate more should they call us by a name we do not really want, our officials of the Swiss government. As mediator, Switzerland cannot afford to use a name that would be seen by Colonial Yaoundé as recognizing Ambazonia. If Switzerland were to officially call us Ambazonians, they would be sending a message to the colonizers that they are already granting recognition to Ambazonia before it is recognized. It would be wonderful if our foreign partners were to refer to us as such. But if they cannot, we should focus not so much on these de minimis issues. Rather, our eyes should and must remain eagle fixed on the ultimate prize, which is the independence of Ambazonia. What would be truly unacceptable would be if any of those from the international community involved with future negotiations join Colonial Yaoundé in referring to us as terrorists. Hopefully, that never happens. Nonetheless, Ambazonians daily are condemned to listen, watch, and or read, much to their chagrin and anger, tapes, videos, and articles calling them by names they absolutely loathe and want no association with. Good news is that we know these appellations are temporary. Our ultimate joy, pride, and dignity will be fulfilled and intact so long as whoever calls us Northwest and Southwest whatever ends up ensuring that we become Africa's 55th independent nation. This is Manjang Jude Ambe for Ambazonia Calling.
Since the days of John the Baptist, the kingdom of God suffered violence. Only the violent one takes it by force. Show on the ground king. Boom. You the cry, about what the cry. Don't tire, about what why.
Mama they cry, we are they cry, about what they cry, we they cry.
Republic una free. Amango today inside pay, you know the free. We president on the side say oh man of yay. Grand ambition, fuck that slogan, no yay. Presido, the pay jaga jaga. Una take all in the way for scatter. They need 102 students for send address. Una select 2 Anglophones, escape address. Bia, young, vision, treason. Escape who know why man show BBC there for prison. They don't tell all we then start for colors Anglophones. Fuck up the government, we ain't tools. Minister for Communication, no fit talk good English. Southern Cameroon independence, that's my wish. No good third roads, no seaports, no light, no attack, no airports. President, you overget fake promises. Wait to happen for the news, you bring us diseases. But men are the cry, we are the ask why. You don't go for that chair, you don't go shake, you go die.
Men are the cry, we are the cry. About what they cry, we they cry, una free me, but men they cry, we are the cry, we they cry, una free me.
Very few Ambazonian leaders who were previously incarcerated have walked free from jail. Those who have tend to behave like something indeed happened in jail, something monstrous. Ambazonia Calling has been tipped up by plans by colonial Cameroon to slap heavy jail terms and even life sentences and condemnations to death on some of Ambazonia's most prominent political prisoners. Here is Willie Brotherday with that report.
Ambazonians have had a few of their leaders released from jail during the course of this revolution, and it has been with joy that news of the release of these leaders has been greeted. However, the joy of past releases from jail has quickly turned into worry, even sadness, as in the case of 2 of the most prominent leaders of the outlawed consortium. Barrister Agbon Kongo was one of the de facto trinity of this revolution, along with Deacon Wilfred Tassang and Dr. Neba Fontem, until the learned lawyer walked free from jail. Agbon Kongo, notably, and with the revolution already marching towards restoration of independence, he took sides for federalism, infuriating millions who went from loving him in jail to hating him outside of jail. The second example is that of Dr. Ntumfoyn, whose deafening silence since being released from jail and his refusal to take a public position in support of independence for Ambazonia has left many wondering if he is not living through a hostage situation. In the lead-up to negotiations, it is not impossible, as Ambazonia Calling has been reliably informed, that the Biya Kangaroo Court will condemn Sisi Kouayou Tabe and his close aides, codenamed the Naira 10. The regime, according to our sources, is planning to condemn them to death or excessively long prison terms to make them no different from life imprisonment. The goal of the colonizer is to raise the anxiety levels among Ambazonians, sending a message to Ambazonians that Biya is still king despite the negotiation process. The condemnations at the bar would then be used by the regime to try to extract major compromises from Ambazonians. Yaoundé will try to extract some concessions for commuting the death sentences to life imprisonment and to go from life imprisonment to presidential pardon and release from incarceration. This is a game and a bargaining tactic that Ambazonians should not fall for, including notably the prisoners themselves. If Ambazonians want to lower the political price tag on the heads of the leadership and fellow comrades in the jails and dungeons of La République, the very top leaders in jail at Kondengi need to send a message loud and clear that they won't leave jail until all other political prisoners are released before them. Nelson Mandela taught us how this is done. His example is one that our leaders in jail and dungeons of La République du Cameroon should try to emulate, although I know this is easier said than done. This is Willibrod Ade for Ambazonia Calling.
Welcome to our special interview segment, The Devil Unmasked, The Truth Out. With deep apologies to our listeners, we cannot upload all of the interview that we had with Ambassador Giorgos. Giorgos is a former Eritrean ambassador to the United States, Manjong Jutambe, and the monk from Ibali Kumato ran into him. They did an interview, but we had some really bad sound. And so we salvaged a few questions from that interview. Here's Manjong Jutambe introducing Ambassador Giorgos.
Welcome, Mr. Ambassador Giorgos. You are Eritrean and one who worked and fought tirelessly for the independence of Eritrea. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, sir? Considering that we are Ambazonians and we find ourselves absolutely in the same hole that you guys were a few years back.
Well, the problem in Africa is the denial of our people's self-determination, self-government, really enabling them to manage their daily lives themselves. And I think all Africans of goodwill must support all legitimate struggles for self-rule, for managing their own affairs according to their own wishes. And so the Eritrean struggle was an anti-colonial struggle that aimed for self-determination in the form of sovereign independence. As we found our own solution in the case of Eritrea, you should find your own solution that assures your right to self-government, your right to manage your own affairs the way you wish. And of course, it's very difficult in this age to get support from African governments because the OAU, even the AU, has become really, to call a spade, a club of the heads of state where they are quite reluctant to criticize the domestic policies of each other. So I think it's the Cameroonian people in Amazonia, who must find their own solution as per the history and socio-economic development of the country and the wish of the people.
When Ethiopia did to Eritrea what they did to Eritrea under Haile Selassie, they walked into a trap that led into a war that so many people died. Would you say that's the same trap that French Cameroon has walked into with Ambazonia by recolonizing us?
I hope not. I really hope that there could be a peaceful solution that would avoid the disaster of war, because Eritrea, 30 years of war, it was really 30 years of destruction, 30 years of killings, and 30 years of lost opportunity for development. So I really wish you the possibility of avoiding the Eritrean path to self-determination.
We appreciate that, sir. Also, listening to you this evening during your presentation, you all but call Eritreans and Ethiopians brothers and sisters. Does being brothers and sisters alone and nothing more mandate and or condemn you to live together regardless of what one brother does to the other?
Not at all. Brother, sister, look, I basically had my formative years in the United States. So brother and sister was an Afro-American expression. I would call every man or woman of color my brother, my sister. It's in that sense, okay? Otherwise, Eritreans, as I try to say, have a distinct history, a distinct culture, and also a narrative to tell. And the Ethiopians the same, and the Somalis the same. In a way, we are interrelated by blood, mixtures, mobility, movements of populations, etc., etc. So there is a lot of commonality, but Eritreans remain Eritreans, Ethiopians remain Ethiopians, and Sudanese, likewise Somalis. But what we're saying is we have strategic, economic and security interests that really compel us to come together to build a common future, peaceful coexistence, while maintaining our own national sovereignties.
We could not agree more. Also, sir, listening to you today, there was one thing that we could not miss. It was your open disdain for useless bloodshed. As an Eritrean and as one that has served its government and its country and its people, what would you say were the reasons that pushed Eritrea into arms, regardless of what their sufferings were?
Look, I'm not a pacifist. I fought for my country for 20 years. I'm ready to fight anytime. I'm not a pacifist. But I believe that everything must be done to avoid war, to find a peaceful solution. In the case of Eritrea, all peaceful avenues were closed. And when Eritreans protested in the capital, they were fired on and killed. So people realized that you cannot face bullets with placards. So that's why the preparation started for the armed struggle. It took us a long time. We paid huge sacrifices, not just in terms of lost opportunity for development, but also tens of thousands of our youth killed. Tens, maybe thousands of our villages destroyed. Really hundreds of thousands of our people displaced and forced to become refugees in neighboring countries. So war is, I can tell you, legalized mass murder and mass destruction, and it should be avoided to the extent possible. War is justified only in terms of self-defense, but real self-defense, not concocted self-defense.
I'll thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It's a little bit difficult, and I know you're pressed for time. Hopefully we'll get a better opportunity some other time to talk even further.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
And really the best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
I know I have Cameroonian friends in Brussels, and I keep abreast of developments in Cameroon, and I sympathize with the people of Ambazonia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very, very much.
The main narrative out there is that Southern Cameroon is struggling to get out of colonial domination under French Cameroon. The truth, though, is that Ambazonia is colonized in effect by France. So the fight that Ambazonia is embracing right now is not one they're fighting only against Cameroon. They're fighting against France, maybe all of the Francophonie and the France-Afrique mafia. Here is Divine Anje.
Ambazonians have a rock-solid case to make against Cameroon for annexation, recolonization, and genocide. The enemy, though, is not just Cameroon. In a world where the most powerful eat the small and the weak for breakfast, Ambazonia has to prepare to defeat not so much Cameroon as France. Whatever Cameroon has been doing in Ambazonia, it has been with the blessing, complicity, duplicity, and explicit support of France. It started with France's opposition and vote against independence for Southern Cameroons, and then the premeditated crime of recolonizing Ambazonia, which has never stopped. As in Rwanda, France's silence while genocide unfolds in Ambazonia is tacit approval of the motives, methods, and goals of La République du Cameroun. Ambazonia's sin is our resources, which accounts for 60% of the GDP of the Cameroons. In other words, the French will be fighting alongside its stooge in Cameroon and seeking the help of its friends within the European Union and the Security Council to try to frustrate Ambazonia's right to independence. Ambazonia must therefore prepare to face resistance from the world. France will recruit every and anyone to the cause of preventing Ambazonia from emerging. France will certainly invite 20 other countries around the world that face separatist movements to unite with them in preventing justice from being delivered to Ambazonia. Ambazonians should trust no one but themselves. Even countries like Ghana, hitherto seen as very likely supporters of Ambazonia, have to be considered as doubtful on the Ambazonian question, especially considering the recent awakening of agitation for independence in the former Togoland. This is Divine Anje for Ambazonia Calling.
Wetin you want them from us? Must I suffer? Come out for our country. Come out. I say this one a danger because some people no go ever chop this jangi. Come out. Who be you? Who be you? Poverty. Who be you? Come out. Come for life. Who be you? Who be you? Come out. Who be you? Who be you? Corruption. Who be you? Come out. Who be you? Now I don't know. Who be you? Come out. Father heal our land. Father heal our land from the likes of Gomorrah. Come out. Father heal our land. Father heal our land from the likes of Lucifer. Come out.
At some point, perhaps in the distant future, Ambazonians will finally agree that it is necessary for them to create a credible, legitimate, and elected governing authority. Over the last 2.5 years, there has been loud opposition against the idea of constituting anything through elections. Here is Tanyi Jude Agwawuz again with an analysis on some of the implications of this delay.
The thorny issue of representative structures within the Ambazonian revolution could have been solved a long time ago. Early in the revolution, Maurice led a campaign for Ambazonians to elect their leaders, conferring on them the kind of credibility and legitimacy that is needed to determine if one speaks for the people indeed. Maurice could have been crucified for daring to offer such a sacrilegious idea. We are in a revolution. Ambazonians were told in loud campaigns engineered to silence calls for open governance systems and structures. The rejection of elections as a means for setting up a representative revolution facilitated the transformation of an entity like the Skakuf Governing Council into the government of Ambazonia, complete with His Excellency, the President of Ambazonia. Never mind that another President of Ambazonia, His Royal Highness Fongoji Dinka, was already on the throne, or so to speak. So opposed was the Ayoktabe's team to elections that even when the elections were launched for the purposes of endorsing Ambazonia's application to the United Nations, the recall of any parliamentarians and senators from La République Houses of Parliament, the Ayok-Tabe scam kick against them. Even when Dr. Common Sense took over from Ayok-Tabe as the leader of the IG group, his declaration that a revolution can only be run as a dictatorship left a surprisingly high number of Ambazonians indifferent. It is opposition to an elective leadership that has led to the situation in which every Ambazonian liberation movement can claim to speak on behalf of all. Rejection of elections as a means of hiring and firing leaders in the revolution has left Ambazonians using coups to try to unseat those holding positions. That is how come the APNC, held in Philadelphia, decreed that Comrade Sako was no longer the interim leader. Ayok-Tabe decided from jail to fire Comrade Sako, then Comrade Sako returned the favor, topping it up with impeachment and leading to one presidency and two interim governments. It got even better when one man, acting all alone, Dr. Neba Fontem, gave himself enough power to suspend Comrade Sako from the SCLC, of which he is not a leader. It is the rejection of elections that made it hard to blame any of the liberation groups that spoke from Geneva this week on behalf of Ambazonia. The time has come. In fact, it came a long time ago when Ambazonians must think hard about the danger they exposed this revolution to by denying the people a chance to endorse a council of leaders with a clear mandate over a given period of time, with an obligation to renew the mandate if it expires, and with limitations on the number of times such a renewal is authorized. I would like to argue that this is a popular idea, but I won't say so because who elected me? This is Tanya Jude Agua Ozugen from Ambazonia calling.
We don't do foolish, but when there are capital fools out there, we make it our duty to find them, and every week we crown one of them the Nyamfuka of the week. It is another week, and Veronique Ntumfoyn has got the lineup of the new kings and queens of foolish.
Finishing in third place this week are Ambazonian experts in negotiations. Finally, they are announcing their presence. They are letting everyone know that they should be at the table when and if Ambazonia negotiates with La République. They are angry that someone else dared to go into any preliminary negotiations without them. They are running down anything agreed during informal contacts that are unavoidable in order to set up negotiations, at which they intend to show us how much they know and how well they do. There are only two small problems. The first is that none of the Ambazonian experts in negotiations has been at any negotiations that led to or were involved with independence for a country. These experts are like someone looking for a job that requires plenty of experience and they're still green from school with zero experience. Second, where have all these resurrected from the dead experts been all these years while Ambazonian groups and leaders ate each other raw and jeopardized the revolution? For waiting only to advertise expertise in negotiations now, Ambazonian experts in negotiations are this week's third place finishers for the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week. Them all. In the position of runners-up this week is the Ambazonian Recognition and Collaborative Council, ARC. Unhappy with the fact that a deal was reached this week to start a Swiss-led process to a negotiated settlement, the leadership of ARC, notorious over the last many months for taking positions at odds with constituent members, reignited what is apparently becoming a favorite pastime to vilify, attack, and seek to undo political positions that it does not support by trying to paint the other side as sellouts. This week's outing consisted of describing liberation movements which support the Swiss-led process as rogue organizations, an accusation which other organizations did not level at the leadership of the ARC when it broke with ARC members to proclaim support for referendum, for seeking to diabolize any political views it does not hold. The leadership of ARC under Catherine Fomango are this week's second place finishers for the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week.
Nyamfuka them all.
Winning the crown again this week, and for the second time in 3 weeks, is the senior researcher for the Central African sub-region at the New York-based Human Rights Watch, Ilaria Alegrozi. Ever since we here at Ambazonia Calling and other Ambazonians, for instance, the Southern Cameroon's Liberation Council, called her out for providing a cover-up for the colonial regime of Mr. Biya, Ilaria Alegrozi turned to scandalous harassment and accusations. This week, she accused self-defense units in Bali, in the northern zone, for kidnapping, ransom taking, and torture of civilians. There is no attempt on our part here at Ambazonia Calling to deny that they are abuses. It's a shame that on an interview with the BBC, Ilaria Alegrozi had no real facts to offer as to how Human Rights Watch definitely and conclusively identified the unit responsible for the acts of torture to be Amba Boys, not Atanganji Boys, also passing for Amba Boys, for abusing their office and responsibilities to go after Ambazonian self-defense groups without hard proof. Ilaria Alegrozi is once more this week's winner of the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week.
Nyamfuka them all.
This is Veronique Vetimfe for Ambazonia Calling.
It started like a joke and I smiled. From Meme to Momo, we said no violence. Now I know not how to smile, 'cause my loved ones are gone. There is no place to call home. Our homes have been burnt. I am homeless in my homeland. There is no place to call my home. Homeless, homeless, homeless in my homeland. When are we going to have a dialogue? We have buried more than enough. Nothing heals the past like time. When are we going to have a dialogue? We've been marginalized enough. You may fool some people sometime. You cannot fool them all the time. Homeless, homeless. I am homeless in my home.
No matter how intelligent you are, no matter how skilled you are doing things, mistakes will be made. You will pick a bad card. You will have a bad day. Here is Barrister Sia Jumvambe explaining exactly how that has happened in this revolution and why the finger pointing is of no use.
It is no secret that Bob Marley is one of my idols from whose music I often draw inspiration. Bad Card is the tune that has been ringing in my head these days. As astute, shrewd, or committed as we are or think we are, we have all drawn a bad card or cards at one point or another over the course of these almost 3 years. not answering the call to revolutionary duty, not funding the revolution, embezzling or mismanaging funds meant for the revolution, taking action that has harmed or could harm the revolution, sabotaging or vilifying fellow comrades, failing to expose or objectively speak out against falsehoods and betrayal. These are all some of the bad cards we have drawn. If all the activity, especially in the diaspora, we are seeing, hearing or engaging in these past few months is indeed a glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel, our anxiety level is bound to rise and the potential to draw bad cards also increase. Poker faces, deep thoughts, and keen observation of the opponent are what we need at this critical moment, lest we draw that one additional bad card that will knock us out of the game. If any more bad cards are to be drawn in this liberation struggle, may they be drawn by the opponent, not us. And may we do everything within our power to ensure that the opponent draws nothing but bad cards. That's my prayer today. Listen to Bob Marley's Bad Card. Enjoy and reflect with me. This is Sia Jimbo Ambe for Ambazonia Calling.
Professor Carlson Anyangwe, who has contributed enormously towards advancing the Ambazonian cause, criticized comrades this week for doing things he believes they should not do, at least not without consulting with their base. The trouble is, very many Ambazonians believe he does the same things. Here's Innocent here.
Professor Anyangwe is in no position, honestly, to speak to these matters. He signed the Foley Hawk law firm deal. How much research did he do? Was it excitement? Was it out of experience? Had he consulted other attorneys from Ambazonia who are resident in the United States of America and understand the language and context of some issues better than he may? Is it not Professor Anyangwe that endorsed the statement by Fofongala that we're in a revolution and cannot be talking about elections? How come he is talking about leaders obtaining a mandate from their base? What mandate is he now referring to when we are, to use his words, in a revolution? Anyangwe is a professor at law with mastery of the history of Southern Cameroons, no doubt. But I would not have Anyangwe on the team of negotiators because there is a world of difference between a classroom and a courtroom. Professor Anyangwe is great in a classroom setting. He scores less than an F in the courtroom setting. Innocent Chair for Ambazonia Calling.
Nothing is more important in organizing open, fair, just, and prosperous societies than to grant self-rule to the people, than to allow them to decide their destiny. Here is the monk from Ibale Kumato explaining why self-rule is so important.
Self-rule is the holy grail of whatever is called democracy. Self-rule is a built-in attribute of all self-propelling entities, humans in this instance. Whether we want it or not, self-rule is what a human does from when they wake up to when they go to sleep. And if a human wants, they can self-rule sleep too.
What up?
Question.
Check out my groove is the
How do self-propelling entities organize themselves in a common sense and practical fashion in order to live long and prosper without too many accidents? Note, propulsion implies motion, and when you have many self-propelling entities in constant volatile motion, there are bound to be accidents. Creating, designing, and implementing a framework to mitigate accidents and facilitating a functional operation of a community of self-propelling entities is the algebra. Unless we allow a foreign self-propelling entity to impose its dysfunctional framework, and we in turn back off our propulsion to a wait-and-see position. At that point, it is what I call a wakikuki situation. It means you just sit around, look, wait for something to happen. I guess that's why John Kennedy said way back in the 1960s, ask not what your nation has done for you, but what you have done for your nation. Self-propelling entities should keep moving. Don't stop the movement. One step at a time. It's been long coming. Running out of gas at this point is not an option. Actually, it will never be. If a human self-propels, it should self-rule. In fact, that should be law 101. This is the monk from Ibali Kumato for Ambazonia Call.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down.
And I call on all Cameroon soldiers to lay down their arms within Ambazonia and to turn their arms against the very system that has made them slaves in the land of their birth.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
Here is our letter to Joshua.
Dear Joshua, I have heard that you have been forced to move out of the presidency which you built abroad for the bread and sardine republic, the one you built at the Intercontinental Hotel in downtown Geneva. No, I don't mean Bill. I mean the room. Is it the suite? Rumor now holds that you moved into some makeshift hotel located in one of those discreet suburbs of Geneva. The anti-Sardinars are looking for it. I hear you were very badly shaken by the protests that they organized the other day. Or should I call the protests riots instead? The Tontinars wanted you. They wanted you dead or alive. Thank God for Swiss police. They reverted to the kind of tactics that your police and your savage military and presidential guard use in Angola. They use tear gas at go-go. They had water cannons fed with crocro-infested smelly water. And they took it to the protesters in loud explosions and jet flows of water. It is a miracle that you were able, despite your collapsing lungs and the repeated asthma attacks, to go through all of those attacks with tear gas. Oh, you're lucky to leave Geneva, because if you survive the anti-Sardinas, you're not going to survive the tear gas. You are lucky to be alive. The Tontinars had you encircled, like game encircled by hungry hunters. Look, they were going to drag you out of the hotel, like they did Samuel Doe in Liberia. They had plans to patrol you through the streets of Geneva to shame you before everyone, before dispatching you to an everlasting, never-resting place. To know how serious the anti-Sardina were, check out the fact that one of their female commanders took a room in that hotel where she intended to act as a lone wolf. She was taking herself seriously. She was equipped with handcuffs with which she told followers on Facebook she intended to arrest you and to bring you to justice. Your bodyguards chased her down, beat her up and tore up her dress and tried to make all of that sound funny. When on the eve of the protest they gathered next to a car and consumed Guinness like there was no tomorrow, while promising to eat tontinaz for breakfast. They ended up at the police themselves for being drunk in a public place. There's nothing funny about being targeted for physical elimination in Geneva. If in doubt, please ask the family of Félix Moumier how they feel to this day. Your illustrious predecessor coordinated with French secret agents and Swiss authorities to assassinate Moumier. The Swiss looked the other way, letting the French agents slip across the border from France and let them set up the whole operation with the help of a call girl. The Swiss are absolutely worried that the Ambazozos and Tontinaz who have all come to town are all looking to take you down and take you out. So staying on at the Intercontinental was not an option. The fact that you have been the client of the year for many, many years at the establishment doesn't mean, well, that you should stay on there. Look, you could have bought the place. You could have taken some of the billions that you have paid into the place to buy it. One member of the Swiss parliament who is truly honorable, I mean, not as horrible as the other ones who want to look away, that one honorable member, she's asking for you to be deported from Switzerland. The campaign says they no longer want the billions of euros that you spend each year. Someone was saying you could buy the hotel and you could stay on. But wouldn't that violate Chop-Broke-Pot rules, which call for spending until you drop dead? I just want you to know, Joshua, running around changing hotels, changing lives, changing blood, changing your whole system, buying yourself a new heart, wouldn't change nothing. It's coming to you.
From our studios here in Washington, D.C., our producer is Jeff McCoy. Our music today is from Ken Wanaku, the monk from Balikumato, William Ford, an ambassador of blessed memory, Eric Matisse on the web at soundimage.org, and Prince Ajua Alemanji of Ajam Sonic Kitron, USA. Ambazonia Calling is a joint production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. You can find us on the web at www.themissionstribune.com, www.compassfreepress.com, and www.africafreedomnetwork.com. Next Sunday is another day. Until then, keep the spirit, keep the faith, keep up the fight for justice and independence for Ambazonia. Stay Amba strong.